To another
Hopefully.
episode of the Sales Chatter with DJ and Dan. We brought a guest along today, and we'll get into this guest. But today, what we're going to talk about is we are going to talk about how to tell a really bad story and take you a little bit into the mindset of a logistics manager in today's day and age.
To the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Now, Bobby, I don't know if you ever seen that fancy dancy intro. You see that shit?
No, but I was liking it.
So, everybody, welcome
Like
again
that.
to today's episode. So before we got on air, we were just kind of talking, and I'll introduce our guest today, and then we'll dive right into it. So we got Bob McKenna with us today. Bob's from Izzy Rigging and Trucking. Now, Bob and I originally met some 20-something years ago now. Bob was at a company called Lamtech, and for all of you in the logistics world, you're going to probably understand this a little bit. A salesperson left the company I was at, and I had one of the bigwigs walk in my office and say, "This is now your customer. I want you to call them, and I want you to keep the business because God forbid we let the business go with that salesperson that left." So I picked up the phone because I was the executive account manager, and I called Bobby up and instructed him that I was his new account rep. And the words that preceded that blew me away. His words pretty much along the lines of, like, fuck you are. I have no idea who you are. You just call me up and tell me you're my account rep. Sound familiar, anyone? So that was the beginning of an absolutely incredible friendship that started because I was a ripe age of 17. As I just said off air, I probably still smelled like pee. And Bobby was a seasoned vet that just said, who the hell are you telling me what I'm going to do? I deal with X type of person in this. So it's a great time for you to jump in, Bobby, because for us and this progression and what we're going to talk about today about telling stories badly, the mindset of traffic managers, bring us back to that day for a minute. Like, what was the first,
I can't tell you that I would recommend that strategy to young people in the industry, but the tenacity and the vigor definitely made me question who the frick this guy is. Why has he got this approach? So it captured my attention. And from there, honestly, you stayed vigilant and you would call me regularly. And one day it was just the right time. And I said, you know what? You can have all the business to Canada if you cover this. And bang, you did it. And from there on.
I don't think I've ever asked you. Were you stuck when you asked me that?
I was not. I happened to have a dear friend of mine in my office at the time who may be of Italian descent. And I didn't have the time, but I needed it covered. So I said, you know what? We're going to put this kid on the spot. Now is the time. Do it or don't.
Yeah.
And you
Step
did it.
up or step back.
I love it. Yes. And guys, so that's a sneak peek into this. If you talk to a guy like Bobby, he knows what he's doing. So don't fuck up. You better make sure you know what you're doing and saying. That's all I can tell you. Oh, man.
Well, at least be open-minded and objective. The people that Dan was smart enough to know that he didn't know it all. And he admitted that when he didn't. But what he did commit to is doing his diligence to getting it done. And it turned out he got it done. And in that vein, I was much more readily willing to assist him too, or give him direction, or mentor in essence. You know what I mean? Which I think is still out there.
Yeah, Bobby, you were a huge mentor. So I don't know if you remember, but I can remember vividly having my first trip solo to Jersey. I came to see you and a couple other people, and it's funny because I get to the airport and I go to rent a car, and they're like, "Okay, driver's license," and they go, "Well, you're not 21." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." They're like, "Well, you can't rent a car." So here I am stuck at Newark Airport. I have no way around. I've got all these meetings, and I can't rent a car because I'm that I'm naive. I don't know what the word is. New, green.
You're a kid. You're a kid.
I was a kid. I think I was 19 at that point. Like I was 18. I was just turned 19, or I was just turning 19. Like in Canada, I was able to rent a car because it's 18. And I just thought that, I guess throughout my entire career, I have these moments where I get humble So like, so I call Bobby up and I go, Bobby, like I'm at the airport. He's like, okay, perfect, man. Let me know when you're here. I go, no, see, there's a problem. And I tell him and he's like, are you fucking kidding me? because you're coming to see me and I got to pick your ass up. Yeah, it was the ongoing joke for years when we did that. And then,
but I can tell you, I refer to that as the Helen Keller method of learning because you bump through shit. You can't see, you don't know it. But those learning moments are more impactful and you retain them. And that builds who you are.
And Bob, you're so, and I love that, the Helen Keller, and that's, yes, bump through the lyric, force your way in it. Sometimes I do that shit all the time. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing, but I mean, like what I'm doing right now, trying to do this business, trying to create something. I have no clue what I'm doing. So
I did take a sabbatical. You're like, damn, that worked out pretty good. I might need to try that again.
To relate a story, I did take a sabbatical from the trucking industry, which was family business my whole life. And I went into a handyman type of service, construction.
Yes.
I had a partner. And when he asked me, well, what if they ask us to do something we don't know how to do? I said, well, I guess we learn on their dime.
Now, it's interesting because, and if I could just jump in there for a sec, Bobby, because I remember when you did that and you were actually on Extreme Home Makeover. You were part of a team on Extreme Home Makeover.
No kidding.
And I remember that vividly because I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to watch it and see you. And I never saw you. I never got a glimpse of you, but you were on Extreme Home Makeover. So it goes to show you, like, from those are kind of two polar opposites, trucking industry and handyman, right? But it goes to show you that, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because you hit that kind of height where now you have that cred that you were on the show and you could have done that, but trucking kept calling you back, brother. And I remember like good old Chico used to say, man, just when you think you're out, it pulls you back in, and it's the industry that just keeps bringing you back in. But so today, a couple of things. Really want you to share with us in the audience, like, dig into the rigging and trucking industry, the heavy haul, the OD, the flatbed, the step, the cranes, all of that industry, because I know as a niche, and I know as in chatting with you, creating the 30-day plan program that we're going to put out shortly, like in the last 36 months, brother, you have taken this to heights that most people strive for in 5 to 10 years, and really would like your in-depth insight into, customer relations, how you do it. I love the fact that you talk about, go back to the baseline, like all this social media and all this shit. Just what's the baseline? What do we as humans, what do we strive for? What do we want? What do we desire? So just take the audience through that a bit. And then we're going to talk about a little bit about storytelling.
Well, to outline the heavy haul trucking rigging industry and try to do it briefly, it's all the big ugly stuff you see on the highway, wide load, permitted, there's escorts, there's a lot of things that take place, and the rigging aspect of that is just then installing those big ugly pieces. When I first got into this industry, coming from general freight originally, when I sat down with the previous owner and founder, and he said, do you think you can do this? I said, Steve, it's just a different size box. It is what it is. And I think to lean into that, you are encompassing flatbed, step deck. The coordination becomes a lot greater than just from and to. There's a lot of other components, which the planning and the detail and almost like a project manager type of thing is how you have to look at that. This type of industry, and it's not volume, it's accuracy. And remember, the values of these things are usually extremely high. I mean, I move on a regular basis. I mean, last year I think we moved 437 units that are over $1 million a piece, just for one customer in particular, which we all use, but due to NDAs, I cannot indulge on that. But with that, going back to, I guess that would take us to what's 101 and the basics, right? And how I became successful in that is because I took it back to those basics. You get a target marketing audience or what, industry that you want to go after, but you have to then take the time and invest your time into it. Learn who they are, what they do. Get in your head around putting yourself in their position. What might be some of the struggles they're facing? What are the things that you would think from your experience? And again, I mean, I'm putting experience in there, which young people starting out may not have, but you have logic. So use it. Think about it from all different levels. Don't dive in and think you know and you're the cat's ass, because you don't know. You know, when you get that knowledge and you're wrapped around it, that's when it's time to now try to engage the customer and let them tell you what are you having troubles with. Remember, you're not impressing anybody by going in and talking and showing what you know, because you're really showing what you don't know. If you allow them to give you some scenarios that you then can put your input in, and sometimes that's a question. So, I mean, me as an old timer now, I appreciate it if somebody asked me a logical question that made sense to the topic we were talking about. I then feel, because it's innate in most human nature to want to help somebody. So by going that approach and the customer realizing you know something about, you've taken your time to get to know as much as you can about what they are, and you truly show an interest. It's just like, young man, you're at the bar, you want to pick up a girl. There's multiple ways of doing it, but what's the one you want to keep is the one you want to get to know. You know what I'm saying? So in this industry, it's building relationships. It is service, normally not necessarily price. I mean, price is always a factor, but by giving that customer the warm fuzzy that you really are working for them and you're an extension of them. And that's pretty much my biggest sell. Listen, how do I become a better partner of yours? I don't even touch on the word vendor. How do I become a better partner? How can I make your life easier, your team? And nowadays, everything is about team and what have you, which is right, and it should be that way. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've gone as far as developing some programs, whether they're, just tweaking that Excel thing or recommending some web-based things that I see by being on the job sites, putting myself out there. Is that a commitment of your own time? Are you necessarily paid for all that on the front end? No, but anything worth having is worth working for.
So what would you suggest then, Bobby, if somebody's watching this that says, I'm really thinking about getting into this heavy haul rigging OD space? What would be a couple of the first steps you would suggest? Because I mean, literally 36 months ago, as much as you had industry knowledge, there's industry like dry van freight. Like DJ's a big dry van guy. He only messes with dry van. I was a big pharmaceutical guy. I was mainly on that reefer and LTL end, and then I started to get into pool distribution towards the end, and then global distribution towards the later part of my career. But for the most part, most of my stuff was like that reefer, pharmaceutical, understanding integrity in the supply chain and that kind of stuff. So as much as it's an encompassing logistics and transportation, field, there's major differences between dry van and heavy haul rigging and the understanding of it. So what would be your primary thing? Like somebody wanted to get in, here's kind of step 1 to 5 in order to make sure you kind of get off on the right foot with shippers, because you're moving $1 million worth of stuff on one order. There's a conversation.
Thank God nowadays with this social media and internet, you got YouTube and Google. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of that. I highly recommend, the people to gravitate towards it should have some kind of either mechanical knowledge, like in high school you worked for a manufacturing company, or, you have some construction knowledge, something about, because a lot of this is job sites. It's basically the same safety protocols as a construction site. If you have none of that and you still want to, you know what? Get in your car, drive around your neighborhood, find where there's a crane set up, park somewhere where you can watch what they do. See, again, investing your time. There is no immediate payout in this. It's not going to happen. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're in the wrong goddamn business. So what I could tell any of these younger people that instead of, from my experience, again, in the vast array of freight, drayage, van, flap, you know what I mean, as you just touched on. This is definitely a niche to get in that your time will pay off. And I promise you that. You know, it definitely will if you take that commitment and to your customer. It really is. The customer service as a norm has gone out the window with any quality. So if you want to set yourself apart, that's the only way to do it is customer service. I mean, I had this conversation with my brother Donald, as you know, just the other day. And the nature of his business is volume, and price. And I said, and I get that. And I was stuck in that for the longest time too. But looking back, hindsight, I also had customers that I should have been taking more time with that had more valuable, more profitable business, that because I was just taking whatever the frig I could get and scooping it all up, they fell to the wayside, not because I meant it to happen, but because you just don't have the time. So I would structure myself in a place where I could build, I'm getting quality work at a competitive rate, but more highly profitable than just answer the phone, yes. Because sometimes the answer is no. It really is. Your service is worth, it has a dollar value to it. And don't drop your price because your service is going to drop. You're not going to be able to hire, especially in the 3PL world. You're not going to be able to hire that quality carrier. You're going to get Joe Schmo that's running down the road with his exhaust stack zip tied to the cab and mud flaps hanging off, and you know what I mean.
I've heard of like dolly legs coming off, but I've never heard of an exhaust stack.
Oh, it's insane. Be in New Jersey. Be down the port in New Jersey. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Like you and I talked about the other day, Dan. You know, the 30-day thing. Well, I want to go and align with the quality that I want showing up at my customer's door because, I mean, we're asset-based, so I don't have that issue very much. I mean, maybe 5% of what we do is brokered or, you know, outsourced. But
that 5% can damage a relationship.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Indefinitely.
And it has. I've had to do damage control on that because also you have to remember on the operational end, managing those outsourced partners or whatever is a whole different way of doing it. And more time is involved and better communication skills. And ultimately, I think all of this comes down to the communication. If you don't communicate with your customer, and you got to remember, even though you have all the best intentions, that you're not going to let them down, and that's how your mindset is because you're very dedicated to them, they don't know that, and they don't know what you got going on behind the scenes. Yesterday, we had an incident where a customer had a crane set up waiting for us to come with the load. Well, we were running late due to issues out of our control, but the driver assumed that the dispatch understood that. The dispatch never heard from either the shipper or the driver, so never conveyed it to the customer. So now we're eating a $5,000 bill for crane overtime, setting up the next day. You know what I mean? So, but it would have all been resolved had a phone call went out at 10 o'clock in the morning. Hey, they're not going to load us till 4.
Yeah. And one thinks the other one's communicating. It's not as if anyone woke up and said, I can't wait to screw this customer over today.
No.
But one person's not communicating. We're thinking, oh, they're going to take care of it. They're in control. We can move on. And nobody's really just validating that conversation or who's having it or what the deal is, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not, nobody was ill-intended. It's just the stupidest little things when you overlook them are the things that cost you the most. And that's the hardest thing to learn, I think, as somebody young in this business. You know, you really have to realize that there is no such thing as over communicating. And this day and age, how easy it is to just drop an email, a text, you know, boom, here you go.
Yeah, really fast.
DM, get your customers into Trello or into Slack or something. Create a little Slack community for them and just an instant message, something to get.
And honestly, I mean, we on our end of the business, we have to adapt to each different customer's protocols. So you may have Slack, and you may have this, and you may have Teams, and you may have Zoom, and you may have Chime, and you may have blah, 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 but You have to make yourself best suited and fit their needs. When you start trying to change shit, like you come to me if I was at Lamb Tech and you're going to change how I do things, move on, next. You know what I mean? And as you're getting older, you're realizing that too. Carriers are different. So our business is not 9 to 5, punch your card and you're done. Your mind has to be constantly. You're driving, you make a windshield time. Think about this shit instead of worrying about listening to Dr. Dre or whoever the hell you're jamming out to.
Dre. What's wrong with Dr. J? That ain't nothing but a G thing, baby. Come on,
man. He's listening to
Bobby,
He's listening to Eminem.
I'm listening to Snoop Dogg and Curtis Blow over here.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then the next song on my playlist is Kenny Chesney, "Waiting on a Woman." And then it's like for me, I've got the most. Exactly. I've got, everybody says that, like, who created this playlist? I'm like, oh, it was me. He's like, dude, it just went from CCR to the Bee Gees to Michael Jackson to Snoop Dogg to Eminem.
You got a Uncle Cracker in there.
You're going through my journey of life, my different emotions. You can tell where I was at on my list too.
Yeah. Well, Jeffrey says Bob's a good man. So, Bobby, you know Jeffrey. We had a
I do very well. He's a great guy. Yeah. And he's another guy that's been in this game a long time. He knows his shit.
Yes, he does. I actually had him on the 30 day as well to talk about it. So, and he wants to grab a drink sometime. So here's what I want to talk about. So, for all of you watching and listening, if you have not read this book and you're in sales, you're missing out on something huge. It is from a storytelling position, from understanding marketing and sales and how they interact, and how, if you market properly, you have to do very little selling. Okay. Seth is the man when it comes to that. So I was reading something again last night. The way I do books is I read it all the first time, and I go back and I highlight the hell out of it the second time. So I was reading it, and I wanted to share a quick passage from this book. So as this hits YouTube and everywhere else, this is Seth Godin's book. It is not me. Copyright, ding dong disclaimer, not me. Okay. So, and I want you to listen to this in the lens of your customer or your prospect. Okay. So it's 5:30. I've got 3 pots boiling on the stove and dinner is 20 minutes out. The phone rings. A quick glance at the caller ID shows me a number of an area code I'm not familiar with. The text ID says AAA Teleservices. I'm already telling myself a story. The lie I'm telling myself isn't pretty. It's a detailed monologue about someone trying to steal my time, to rip me off, to deal with me dishonestly. I remind myself that even answering the phone puts my number on a list of names worth selling to someone else. Still, I chance it. Hello. My story is confirmed in less than a second. First, I hear the telltale click of that dial-head computer-aided system passing me off to the next operator in line. Then I hear the unique bustle and background noise of a boiler room operation. Before the operator even opens his mouth, the story is previewed, told, and sold. I'm not interested. For research purposes, I hang on instead of hanging up. The operator starts giving a pre-written speech. He doesn't stop for at least 10 sentences. He's reading a script, and he's not doing a particularly good job of it. The words don't match his unsophisticated tone of voice. I'm long gone, of course, but the final straw is when he starts saying things that are patently and transparently untrue. I'm with the New York State Police Chiefs Association, and we're raising money for the Benevolent Fund. So all of you, as I was reading this, probably thought this is the duct cleaning service or the window guys that are calling me, right? Obviously being a scam. So I read that, and when I read that, how many of you couldn't help but think, is that how people feel when I'm outbound prospecting? So after reading this, I decided to do some research. So I started texting every customer I had in my phone. And I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but here's the big thing. One customer, now don't get me wrong, this customer is responsible for close to 20 million in annual freight spend. He says, Dan, I'm like 35, 40 a day. Phone calls, emails. Another one who's out in Wisconsin, who's about 15 million in annual freight spend. He's about 25, 30 a day. And I start going down the line, and out of the 15 customers I text, 14 of them got back to me. Not one was below 20 calls a day. So my question then becomes, and gentlemen, open floor, because I know you're all going to want to dig into this. At what point do our calls become more of a pain in the ass than anything else? And as a sales rep, give the audience some like gold to break through that. Either one of you start.
So I'll take it first because you hit some good things on your passage. So the thing you, when you read that and you mentioned Boiler Room, instantly popped in my head the movie Boiler Room. You guys haven't seen it, you got to see it. But it talks, and then you're talking about the telemarketer, and I thought of when he's sitting there at the table and he answers the phone, and the telemarketer calls for the New York Times or something, some newspaper. He's trying to sell him on subscribing to the newspaper, and he questions him. And I've done this to telemarketers, so it's kind of funny. And just from watching the video, he tries to get the telemarketer to really sell and tell a good story and listen to the points of the customer, what they're wanting, and really sell the value of it, not just this canned pitch or this recording that just sounds so annoying. Get off script and talk to somebody. That's the first thing I would suggest. Don't have this long-winded script that you're reading to somebody and not interjecting and letting them feedback. Have a question there and get them to give you as much information as they can as quickly as you can. That's what I got from it. So
DJ, you said it home. I agree with you. My standard answer is it's done, but there's blood everywhere when I get these telemarketers. But to speak to the sales gold, that long-winded script, and we've all done it. We figured we're going to write out a script for each particular service that we sell or which cut. Have you ever had any success with it? No. Again, investing your time. Come up with a 1 or 2 sentence introductory thing that you memorize, not verbatim. You memorize the thought. Yes. Present that, because each time it's going to come out different. And now we all know some people we're going to get along with and we're going to do business. Other people, it's just never going to happen. You can tell that in the first 5 minutes, not even a minute of the conversation. Absolutely. But in your notes, jot that down. Hey, listen, when you hit this guy back up in 2 weeks, he did mention something about his daughter's recital, or go old school with that stuff. Take a vested interest in the people that you want to be your customer. You're building a relationship. Stop with this frying pan, boom, let's do it, most bang for the buck, screw the customer all you can. No, if you want long-term sustainable income, you're going to have to build those relationships where that customer knows, okay, I may be paying a little more, but this guy is going to walk it through. If there's something that I need to know on Sunday afternoon when I'm sitting down, he'll call me or text me. I'm not getting blindsided. Put yourself, as you said, in the customer's shoes as best you can.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ryan said it right. Ryan here says it's the framework and not the script is key. And then Jeffrey's come back and said, show empathy, tell the prospect, he gets hammered every day and you won't take up much of his time. Be yourself. And my take on that is pretty much right up that alley, Jeffrey. I believe wholeheartedly that if you don't understand what's happening in our prospects' worlds as a general, like obviously you don't know what's happening in that company on that day, right? 5 people could have called in sick. They could have just gone through a major COVID issue. Like there's all these things, the traffic manager's kid could have just got caught selling drugs. Like you don't know what's happening in that specific company. But as a general overarching industry-wide situation, thing, key, whatever you want to say, like sales calls are up 1,500%. So I honestly think as a sales rep, I need to address it. And I need to say, hey, listen, I understand these people have probably really wasted your time. Like I couldn't imagine if I had 35 telemarketer calls every day. Like, think about it. Just in the time we've been on, if you have 35 every day, my phone would have rang 3 times just in this conversation.
Yes.
And to me, we're trying to deliver, right? As we have an audience, we are trying to deliver to the audience gold to help them sell more. Your customers are trying to deliver to their customers. They're trying to get product at the door. They're trying to keep their team motivated. Like when we look at a traffic manager, it's not just this guy ships freight. He's got a team. He's got managers. He's got KPIs. He's got mandates. He's got all this other shit that none of us take into consideration because no. I want commission, man. What are you doing?
Where's the freight?
Hey, listen, Ryan there nailed it. You know, that's somewhere where the scripted emails, I think, is an incredible tool, which we didn't have back in our day, Dan, necessarily.
Yes.
Because with that short, sweet, scripted, and different emails. First week, you're sending this, just a brief overview. Then target something specific, but short and sweet, because nobody wants to read a long-winded bullshit email. Yeah. Then after about, what did they say, the 5th email, that's the time to pick up the phone. But he made an excellent point there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. And Jeffrey says stay in your lane as well. Absolutely, And this is Ryan's, to be fair, because we email the prospect before we call. They know who we are. Yeah, 100%.
Use the same unified marketing. Don't be changing your logo, your signature. Get that familiarity with them when they see it. Okay. And at one point when I was doing the truckload and what have you, I actually would put out the constant contact. That's another one that you have. Just reading something out of Transport Topics or research, a little snippet that anybody in the industry would find useful, or people that I knew did a lot of intermodal, and you do that. Then you hit the dray customers with something else. Just little book like, hey, here's a thought of the week. A Thomas Edison quote, whatever that is. Just out of sight, out of mind.
Also had great success where once I connect with a customer and kind of have a conversation, you know me, Bobby, I'm like the note king. Like I'm detailed notes like a madman. You saw that when we did our interview, how much I wrote. And what I would do is every key piece of our conversation over the next 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, year, 2 years, regardless how long we were doing business, I would start sending them articles saying, hey, I remember in our conversation we spoke about this. Here's an article that kind of goes a little bit more in depth. And then the key to it was I would add my own voice, right? I wouldn't just say, I would come out and say, this is what I believe in this article is accurate or what I see or whatever. And sometimes customers were like, yeah, I disagree with you. But other times they were like, yeah, absolutely. But that creates that authentic conversation that goes back and forth. And it also shows, to me anyways, shows customer, prospect, customer, whoever, hey, this person's on top of the market. They see what's happening, right? Because, you go back to something you said right at the beginning, Bobby, where you said, your customer needs you to mitigate their negative exposure. And they want to be able to sit down and watch the ball game on Sunday and not worry if that freight's late on Monday morning. They're not going to get hit with it from the customer before you. So you're going to be preparing them for what it is.
Well, that's interesting, and that I think maybe one of the key components. Their customer is ultimately our customer by separation.
100%.
So you got to remember that the better you can help make them look, the more they're going to remember your contribution to that outcome.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
and you said it perfectly too, Bobby. And that's what we kind of have been trying to, I guess, convey to anybody who is watching this. It's a partnership. If you're not going into this with whoever you're calling and taking all of their pains, the overpricing, and that's the cost of freight, and you're not feeling that pain with them, you're not in it with them. You're in it, like Dan said, for the commission of it. We are there to bring value to them. That's what the whole purpose of this is, a partnership and bring value. If we're not bringing value,
good at it, yes. If you're worth your salt, you have to be bringing value.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why are they going to deal with you? Why would I let that kid from Canada try that shot if I didn't think from his tenacity and energy that he wasn't going to walk that thing through if he had to carry it on his back? You know?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and here's the thing. I think even higher level, our main mission as a sales rep is to help our customers achieve their goals, mandates, and desires for both their department and corporate. You know, over the years, more and more and more, and nothing was more prevalent to. I remember client came to me and said, like, listen, we're having major problems. We're demerged left, right, and center. We haven't gotten bonuses in ages. And I remember my team and I worked diligently for 12 months to eliminate demerge. And we're talking close to $2 million in demerge we eliminated. They got their bonuses. He bought a pool for his kids, like just an above ground pool, but bought a pool.
Yeah.
And that meant more than anything. And it was like, you know, Dan, you and your team are gold. And it wasn't, in the end, sales is a transfer of emotion. I gave him the feeling, the joy, the energy of watching his kids play. Like, so think about this: sitting on his deck, watching his kids play in the pool, saying to himself, because he told me, like, well, yeah, he goes, like, this is literally what I thought. Thanks to deciding to use Dan, because Dan was persistent, I now have this pool for my kids. And that, to me, I mean, that you can't, like, no amount of money saved, no amount of on-time performance, like when there's that emotional connection on the back end, that's worth more than anything. You know, I had a student and come to me, and he's really starting to do well. And when he first found my programs, he was in a really bad spot, and he's really starting to do well. And, you know, he's said to me many times, oh my God, these programs are awesome. These programs are awesome. I'm like, oh, thank you. Oh, you're the man. You're the man. I'm like, okay, thank you. But the one testimonial that I keep going back to is, he goes, Dan, I got home tonight. I told my wife what had happened. And she looked at me and said, I am so proud of you and where you've come in the last 90 days. That means more than any new account, than a commission check or anything like that. So it's not just the freight, everyone. It's what is that emotional attachment on the back end.
Well, and to that point, I mean, look, guys, we're talking about sales, we're talking about logistics, we're talking about all of this, but in the end, this is just life. If we can make everybody who's involved in the scenario or situation that we're involved in, and we can make them win, and everybody wins, we're going to win too. That's just the truth.
Well, absolutely. Now, and we keep going back to the person starting in this industry. What about the veteran, or the guy that owns a 3PL that has 15 people working for him, any of that? You know, I think you tend to forget to delegate. You forget that if you are, managers are supposed to manage and lead. They're not supposed to necessarily do. So there's the teaching aspect, and I think we forget to do that as we get stuck in our microcosm of our blinded world, you know, the trickle down theory, you know. I mean, I've found myself in this, and recently have found people that are in my organization that kind of brought it to a realization for them. If you're here and your biggest personal shortcoming, say, just for shits and giggles, is communication skills, well, you're wondering why your customers are complaining about your company not having positive communication skills. Guess what? That's why it happens. You know what I mean? People forget that you could throw bodies at things, or you could throw money at things, but unless you have identified job descriptions and processes in place, which should be ever evolving, you should never sit on your laurels and wait, because if you want to be the best for your customer, you got new technologies, you got new the software, to this, the guy got the things that go on the ELDs or any of that nonsense that you have, that you constantly have to be at least in tune with and understand. And like we talked about the other day, the smartest man hires smarter men. You know what I mean? Because you can't do it all. You can have a picture of your.
No.
And again, you can't be lazy. If you want to be in this industry and you want to be successful for the long term, don't be lazy. I'm not telling you got to go out and work 16-hour days. Some days you do, but that's where it affords you to be able to go sit by the pool that one day and watch your kids play too. You know what I mean? So it's a balance. And again, like DJ was saying, more and more you have to commit to the teamwork between your client or prospect or whomever, and them to you. And if you can't get past that bridge, move on, because there's somebody out there that does.
And Bobby, I'll add to that, because when I was managing and I was trying to train a sales force, one thing I was always open to, which I find a lot of like vice presidents of sales and stuff are not, is outside training. Like, I knew it had nothing to do with my caliber of how I was able to guide a team and motivate a team and everything. It's a fact of, if you hear this person, maybe 5 or 6 people will be like, oh my God, that's the bell that I need to go off. And then you hear this person, and 5 or 6 people are like, oh my God, that's the bell. And you get 3 different people in to speak, or you get 3 different programs, or you do whatever. And all of a sudden your entire team's engaged. I put on a book club when I first started training salespeople, because I said, hey, we can spend 18 or 20, $25 a person and get 3 years of somebody's life that they put into a book, strategies, tactics, like all of the above, the frameworks and everything. And I remember, because the first 3 books we did, like 2 sales reps, when, we started with Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book of Sales, 2 sales reps were like, oh my God, this book, and then they just started climbing. And then we did another book. And and then we did another book, and they're like, oh my God, this was so amazing. And like 5 other people started climbing. And I watched the evolution of the team with different strategies and tactics. So then you're like, okay, here we go. And I've always found, actually, in transportation, it's like, as an industry, they shy away from sales training and helping their salespeople get better. And, you ask certain people, and depending on, and I found it actually from more of a geographical thing. Like, certain geographical regions are more paranoid than others. I don't know why, but it's like, if I train this salesperson and they go work for company B.
That sounds like a dig. Sounds like something about Jersey and New York, maybe. I don't know. Our egos.
It's not far from
Jersey and New York.
Ohio's not far from that either.
Like, they want to go somewhere, let them go. Don't worry about it. It's a lost cause. It's a fugazi. But I noticed there's that part of the industry as well. It's like, if I train this person, or if I help build this person up, somebody's just going to headhunt them. And I've always believed, if you treat your people right, and if you guide them, instead of being like a dictatorship, and you help them with their life, their planning, they're going to stick with you for decades, for entire careers, and it's those companies that truly win, because they got their core vets, if you will, like the core 60% of the company that's been there for decades. And then they have all the little tentacles that, because listen, let's be honest, right? There's people that come and go in this industry. I remember sitting down with some team members saying, okay, where do you see yourself in 5 years? They're like, well, I'm going to own a cupcake shop. And I'm like, what are you doing in transportation? Oh, I just need to pay the bills. I'm like, who the hell hired this person? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Once you get to a certain level, though, I think you still see a lot of turnover, but I think it can be avoided on exactly what you're saying. Training in general, I think we as a society do it incorrectly. Like, we're very quick to blame a person in a position as management. Again, this is a different look at it, but did we give them the proper training or the proper tools? I can't send a carpenter out there with a plunger. You know what I mean? You just can't do it. And I think we do it over and over. And to touch on your management theory, that's the Richard Branson. He's famous for that, Yes. And again, we oftentimes asset-based companies, okay? You're investing in equipment. At what point is the balance between investing in the infrastructure, your people, your processes, your tools? I mean, I know companies that are using the same operating system that they got 20 years ago and haven't changed. Well, you can't expect to grow necessarily with ease if you haven't grown the foundation, the footprint, in order to handle that weight or that influx. Or, I mean, maybe I'm not making the right analogies.
No, you are. You're on.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And again, that training, that mentoring, once you create a culture where people feel as though, well, I don't want to train that younger guy because he's going to take my job. No, make that older guy feel as though that's his home. The better you make them, the better we're all doing. Where did we lose that? Somewhere that went out the freaking window.
But you know what, Bobby? I've never seen it. Like I've seen people be promoted to managers, and I'm like, holy crap!
Well, how did you earn that?
That's manager ever. Like, and just it's you did well, and this.
And in that vein, though, if they're promoted to manager, who's giving them training on how to be a manager? If you were a truck driver,
it's like you might be a great salesperson, you might land a lot of business, but you can't lead people to help them achieve their goals or guide people. You're not that type of people person. Right?
And there is no blueprint to sales because we're all different personalities. Here's the book of some possible plans that might work for you. But again, how do you find out what works for you? You got to get off your dead ass and try it. And you gotta work. Get up in the morning, get dressed, take your shot. You know what I mean? Don't sit there and think it's coming to you, because if it's coming to you, you may get lucky, but that's all you're getting. You know what I mean?
And those, the old dial for dollars. You're going to eventually find somebody that needs the help, but to really dig into your authenticity, your why, and to start your sales as a business is a completely different thing than just getting lucky.
Well, and like you said, the dial for dollars. How many people, you're getting a traffic clerk that you're talking to, and their boss is telling them the price. Ask the question, why are you so price driven? Well, because my boss told me that I got to get the. Well, how about I come in, I sit with you and your boss? I don't think that what I'm going to present is that much more costly, but I think it's going to save you the time and this, because a very dear friend of mine does an LTL platform. Well, he'll sell it, manage all of that for you. It costs nothing to the customer. It costs the trucking company as they would pay a salesman for. And it's structured that you got your A, the fastest and best rate. B is middle of the road. And C, the slow boat to China. So
is there any fast boats to China these days? Really, when you think about it?
Yeah, but they're usually carrying something that you don't want to transport.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But again, that's why. Ask the question why. Don't just accept what it is or fall into that. Okay, well, they're putting out a blast email. There's 20 of us on this, and they're looking for price. So I got to be the cheapest if I want this business. One, you're wasting your goddamn time, because somebody's going to hold out to the last one and send it in $10 cheaper or whatever. Have the conversation with, hey, how much of your time is consumed with these emails, this baloney? What if we took a look at your past 90 days of freight bills? Let me look at them and see what I could do. Come back with some information. You may not be able to do a damn thing to save them money or to break even, but you may be able to save them time, which is money. Yeah. And then sell that.
Well, and to your point, time is even more valuable than money, really. I mean, that's what we all want. We all want more time. That's what everybody wants. That's the goal of what we're trying to make their life easier, is to give them more time. I mean, even the guys that are starting these companies way at the top, the only reason they started it was more time. Have everybody else doing the work so we get more time. But
time is the foundation of everything. How many people do you talk about? Automate your systems. Automate your system. Hey, if I can give Bobby my freight, and Bobby frees up an hour of my day because I don't have to bother looking for friggin' carriers, or I don't have to, I know at 9 o'clock, at noon, and at 3 o'clock I'm going to get updates, so I don't have to bother picking up the phone. 3 minutes here, 30 minutes or 5 minutes a day is like a week and a half of productivity at the end of the year. So if you can just say 5-10 minutes a day, it's crazy how much that adds up at the end of the year. Now you do that with 3, 4, 5 different people in your company, because you're delegating, you're putting people in charge, you're allowing them to make mistakes and to be better people and to grow and to advance. Now you've all of a sudden freed up 2 hours a day or an hour and a half a day to work on the business as opposed to in the business, to perfect your, get even more aggressive on your mandates, your goals from your department and all that. And that starts with us as logistics professional sales reps, taking that piece that is going to save them time, and that's through investigating.
To hit that, the mistakes, the pros and cons. How often do you see this happen anymore, whether it's with your customer or it's with your team? the end of the week or the end of somewhere, as that manager or the person in charge or responsible, have a file that, hey, these are some of the things that have happened recently that we need to talk about how we can be better. These are some of the things that we did. We nailed it, knocked it out of the park. Let's review that too, whether it's managing your team as far as work or with your customers. Keep that. And now you're going to your customer basically saying, hey, listen, let's kind of review last month's whatever. Hey, I know that I could have done better on this one. These are the corrective actions I have in place that I want to address those situations with so it doesn't happen again. These are some things that I think together we all really did well. Can we continue this? And most times you'll find the pros are surrounded by a line of better communication from start to finish. The cons are usually coming down to the simplest, stupid little thing that you forgot to do, like pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But do we do it?
Okay. Well, and I think, it's a great way to end it today is ask yourself that question. Everyone watching, listening, whether you're listening to this live or you're listening on the podcast later, do you do it? And if you don't, what are you going to do over the next 5 days to put that into effect immediately and make it concrete where you're never going to forget about it or let it go? Thanks for being here, brother. Appreciate it, Bobby. DJ, a pleasure.
Anytime, DJ. Nice seeing you, Jeff.